Right, so I've had some requests for cool down stretch video. A lot of people ask me about what they should do after they've been lifting weights or training in general. And I have two standard ones that I give to everybody. This is the easier of the two. If anything hurts, please stop. This is just a little bit of information for you guys. It's not personalized, it's not individualized, so I don't want anyone hurting themselves. Take it with a grain of salt. This is just the usual stretching routine that I'll do with most people. Starting out, remember this is the easy one. We're going to begin with a little bit of a Cossack squat. I'll grab my handy box. Some people initially will need to lean on something, aiming to feel this stretch through the inner thigh, your adductors. If you're comfy without the box, we can work down towards the ground, working away like this. I want to make sure that that heel stays on the ground and this foot stays pointing forward. We'd hold both of those for about 30 seconds. If you're comfortable going lower, we can sink down a little bit more. But I want to make sure you can still fit your hands inside your knees, you're not falling out here, and the knees not lifting up off the ground like that. Down nice and low on both sides. We'll hold that for a while, feeling the stretch through here. It's also a little bit of work for this other leg. I don't mind that, a little bit of work in the cool down. Remembering, if you need to stay here, that's totally fine. Next one, similar variation. We have the toes pointing up towards the ceiling. We can start up a bit higher. Again, we can start with the box. The aim is to get external rotation from the hip, so our toes point up. Whichever level you're at, we're going to work with that. Hold it for about 30 seconds. Often during the cool down, if you've got training partners, this is the time for a chat, time to relax and switch off a little bit after a hard training session. You're getting your body from that kind of headspace of, I've been stretching hard, I've been working hard, into now I'm relaxing, digesting, recovering, getting back to normal life. Cool, so we've just moved on from our Cossack squat variations. We've been doing these ones. Next step, knee comes down. We're going to do a hip flexor stretch. Really important when we do our hip flexor stretch, we want to tuck the tail under a little bit, so that's called a posterior tilt with your pelvis. If you have an anterior tilt like that, you're still going to be quite short through the hip flexors. Often people will try to get deeper into this stretch by leaning forward, and all they're really doing is extending their back a bit further, just moving their body forward. They're not actually extending the hip. Sometimes we'll see in yoga, people lean in like this. It's all coming from your spine. We don't really want that with this stretch. We're aiming to keep the tail tucked and get the stretch from the front there. Notice as well that the hips are level. So if I had a stick through my hips, we'd want it to be a fairly straight line, not have it pointing up in one direction, one forward or one back, anything like that. Sometimes it's actually helpful to think about pushing the bottom leg forward a little bit, because we'll have a tendency to twist back like that. So tuck the tail under, reach up nice and tall, we'll hold that for a little while. That's a kneeling hip flexor stretch. Do that on both sides. After that, we move on to a kneeling hamstring stretch, where you straighten out the front leg. If we need it, we can use a box for a little bit of assistance. Gives you something to lean on. But what we're aiming to do, as much as possible, is to still use the strength in your hips. We want to have some active flexibility, a little bit of strength, and not just be flopping down here. Make sure that the leg is in a line. Often people will shoot that leg out to the side. You're like, yeah, I'm doing this intense hamstring stretch. But because of where it's placed, they're not really getting the stretch thereafter. Another thing to look out for is often people will round through their backs. They might bring their chest or head down towards their knee, but they're not really lengthening out through the hamstring, they're actually lengthening out through the spine. We want to make a lot of length through the spine and lean forward like that, keeping your chest towards the foot. You can bring your toes towards you and control down. It's a nice deep stretch. Often people will feel that through the calves as well as you sink further into it. And then if you're nice and strong, you can also press back up out of it. We might do that twice on each leg. Back foot can be up or down, doesn't matter too much. Controlling both sides, probably about 30 seconds apiece, nice and long, leaning into it, finding what works for us. Next one will be a quad stretch. A few different versions of this. Some people find it a little bit uncomfortable on their knees, so it might be worth putting something underneath, some kind of pad. Otherwise, we're just going to grab that back foot Again, you can use a box if you need it for balance. Otherwise, no box. Grabbing that back foot, keeping the tail tucked like we tried to do for our hip flexor stretch, and pulling the heel towards the bum. Breathing there, holding onto that, and lean the hips slightly forward, make it a little bit of a deeper stretch. There's a few harder versions of these I'll show in the other video, but this is a nice simple one. You don't need much equipment or any equipment, just a flat surface, maybe something soft to put your knee on, hold there. If even that is too uncomfortable for your knee, then we'll move down to the ground for the next one. Onto your belly. Cool. And once you're down on your belly, just try to keep the knees together, grab onto that back foot, pull the heel towards your bum. If this is too hard, it's really difficult to reach your ankles, you might use something like a strap, wrap it around and grab that to pull on. Sometimes I see people grabbing onto their socks or their shoes. We don't mind that too much, but we're aiming to grab onto the foot or the ankle, pull it towards the heel, keep the hips towards the ground so we're not piking up on one side, not letting that knee flare out to the side. Holding there for 30 seconds. Same thing on the other side. Sometimes we can turn this into a little bit of a PNF stretch, which means we'll try to contract like you try to straighten your leg, and then you'll relax and you'll settle a bit deeper into the stretch. You can repeat that a few times if you like. Otherwise, a nice passive stretch. Try to squeeze your bum, keep your hips on the ground, keep your knees together, and we'll just hold that. Next up. All right. Next we have glute stretches. The easy version of this, I do laying on your back. We're going to cross the right leg over the top of the left leg initially, threading the arms through and grabbing that knee. Sometimes people feel a bit of pressure on the knee if you grab on top. So the other option is to grab underneath there on the hamstring. I'm going to do the knee one because I prefer that. We lie down, and I should feel a bit of a stretch through my rump here, through my glute, as I lay down there. I might want to try pushing my knee away a little bit, and then relaxing a little bit deeper into the stretch. Or I can just hang out here. Nice deep breaths, often after a hard session. This is a time to relax. This is your first opportunity to lay down. And it's nice just to switch off a little bit here. Close your eyes, breathe deeply. We hold that one for however long we need. We might start to slow it down a bit more by now, maybe holding for a bit longer than 30 seconds. And we'll repeat it on the other side. Hugging the knee towards the chest. Make sure you get that arm thread through in between. Some people end up reaching around like this or this, end up in this awkward position. Reach through, and you'll find the right spot. Deep breaths. And we just relax into that one. Nearly done with our easy stretches. The next one is we'll roll onto our belly and start to stretch out the pecs. Okay, so now we've rolled onto our bellies. Next thing to stretch is going to be the pecs. Very important, while we do this one, we want to keep our scaps depressed. That means away from our ears. If we let them pop up, we're going to throw off the stretch. We'll end up stretching something we don't want to stretch. So keep them away from the ears. I'll start with my right side, get that shoulder down and back, and then I'm going to gradually peel off the ground, stretching out through my right pec. I might get a little bit through my bicep as well, that's okay. Watching that I don't end up here. Ouch. Not really doing much of a stretch, or if it is stretching just my anterior delt, which is not what I'm after. So nice and open. We might want to chuck in a leg as well. This will just add in a little bit of a stretch through the spine. Don't need to add that though. If you're comfy, just stretching. Sometimes I'll creep my fingers out to really lengthen out through that arm and get a good open stretch through the chest. We'll hold that one for about 30 seconds and then match it on the other side. You might find with any of these stretches that you have one tight side. For me, my left pec tends to be a lot tighter than my right, so I'll tend to hold that for a little bit longer. Sometimes if I'm having a stretch on my own, I'll stretch my tight side twice and my weak side once, just to try and balance myself out a little bit. so that I don't end up being all asymmetrical for my movements. We're never going to be perfectly symmetrical, but we aim to at least control it so we don't end up with injuries from one side being super tight. Again, keeping that shoulder down, and you can use the breath, really expand your chest from the inside with some deep breaths in, and then let it out, and you can creep a little bit further into the stretch and just relax into position. After we've held that for a little while, we're going to move on to an up dog, or in gymnastics, they call this one seal stretch. I'm keeping my hands in roughly the same starting position. I'm going to lift up through my belly button a little bit so that I'm not sagging into the ground and arching too much through my lower back. Lift up through my belly button slightly, and then gradually peeling off the ground. One vertebrae at a time, lifting up just to where I'm comfortable. If you have a tight, stiff back, maybe you get to here, and that's high enough for you. For me, I'm going to gradually press up all the way, remembering to keep my abs on until my elbows are straight, and then I'm going to control gradually back down. Okay, so just showing you another view of up dog to make sure you can see what's happening. I'm going to lift up a little bit through my belly before I lift off, just to make sure that I don't get all of my extension from my lower back. I want to spread out the movement through all of my vertebrae, all the way out my back, and including my hips a little bit. So I lift up the belly just slightly, and then starting with the head, I'm gradually peeling off the ground, gradually lifting up. Again, you can stop. If that's as far as you're comfortable going, that's fine. But today I'm going to come up nice and high, gradually peeling off, popping all the way up. I'm going to hold for a little bit at the top and just relax there a little bit. Get my shoulder blades back and down, and control back down again. Nice and smooth. One more time, gradually peeling up. And gradually controlling down. Once we've done that, next step is we're going to shift back into our child's pose from yoga. Press back and sit the bum towards the heel. Bum towards the heels. I'm pressing my shoulders into the ground, allowing my hips to sink. Sometimes people like a bit of a wider placement of the knees so they can sink right down like that. I'm going to deliberately keep them close here, just because of how it stretches through the front of my foot and through the front of my ankle. From here, we'll reach over towards the right, and then press the shoulders down towards the ground. I'm aiming to get length from my left lat, left side of my body. And if I take really deep breaths, filling that left lung, that'll help add to the stretch through the left side. I can gradually sink down a little bit lower into the stretch with each breath. Hold that. Once we get to a nice, comfortable and relaxed position at the bottom, as we go along with these stretches, you might want to hold them a little bit longer, because the aim is to really calm the body down. Like I said before, we're getting away from that fight or flight and towards something more akin to rest and digest situation for our nervous system. Deep breath in and controlling down. Deep breath in and controlling down. I'm going to hold that one for about the same, however long that's been. Let's call it 30 seconds on both sides. We'll meet back again in the middle. And just relax here in child's pose. And that's the end of our stretches. Yeah, so that's our second video in this series where I plan on just demonstrating some of the common things that I do with most of my clients. I work with a lot of kids at Melbourne High School, rowers and rugby players. I also work with just regular people. I've got a background in weightlifting and in a few other sports, which you might find out about if you watch a few of these, but the plan is to gradually release a whole bunch of different instructional videos just to share some of the stuff I've learned training people for the last 10 years and training myself for the last
25 years. So hopefully you enjoy that. Hopefully you find that useful. Yeah, look forward to sharing more with you next time.